I stood in a farmhouse 3 miles outside Shipshewana, Indiana in the middle of July, 97 degrees outside with humidity thick enough to cut, and the house was 62 degrees. No air conditioner humming, no compressor vibrating outside, no electric meter spinning faster than a ceiling fan. I spent 15 minutes searching for the thermostat before the farmer told me there wasn't one. What kept that house cool wasn't machinery, it was a pipe. A 4-inch pipe buried 6 feet under the ground, running 120 feet from the north property line straight to the basement, and the air coming out of it was 54 degrees. Not cooled by refrigerant. Not processed by a compressor. Just earth temperature air flowing up through the floor, registers into every room. All day, every day, using nothing but physics that's been understood since before America existed. What you're about to learn is the exact system the Minoans were using on Crete 1500 years before Christ, the same technology Persian engineers deployed in desert cities where summer temperatures hit 130 degrees, and the precise method Amish communities across 8 states use right now to eliminate air conditioning bills that average American households will pay $42,000 for over 30 years. The cooling industry has known about this since the 1920s, when the first residential air conditioning patents were filed, and they've spent nearly a century making sure building codes, HOA regulations, and contractor training programs kept you from finding out it exists. The average American household spends $719 every summer cooling their home. That's $14,380 over 20 years, $35,975 over 50 years. Money transferred monthly to utility companies for a service the earth provides for free if you know how to access it. Your air conditioner fights heat that should never have entered your home in the first place, processing the same air over and over, extracting humidity that wouldn't be there if your home were designed correctly, consuming 4,000 kilowatt hours annually to maintain temperatures the Amish achieve with zero electricity, using knowledge that was standard practice in American agricultural communities until 1952. Here's how conventional cooling fails you. Your air conditioner addresses the symptom while ignoring the cause. Heat enters your home through 3 mechanisms: conduction through walls and roofs, radiation through windows and attic spaces, and infiltration through cracks and poor ceiling. Your AC unit waits until that heat has already entered your living space, then works to remove it by running refrigerant through coils, compressing and expanding gases, and exhausting heat outside while pulling cooled air inside. The system operates in opposition to thermodynamics, fighting against natural heat flow, consuming massive amounts of energy to perform work the Earth would do passively if you let it. The Earth 6 feet down maintains constant temperature year-round. In Indiana, it's 54 degrees. In Texas, it's 67 degrees. In Maine, it's 48 degrees. This temperature doesn't fluctuate with seasons because soil thermal mass absorbs and releases heat so slowly that seasonal variations can't penetrate beyond 5 feet depth. The temperature at 6 feet in July is identical to the temperature at 6 feet in January. This represents the most stable, reliable, free temperature differential available to any homeowner in any climate, and the cooling industry built a $119 billion annual revenue stream by making sure you cool your home anyway except using it. The earth pipe system works like a reverse chimney. Instead of hot air rising and escaping, cool earth temperature air flows in and rises through your living space. You dig a trench 6 feet deep running from a point 100 to 200 feet away from your home toward your basement or crawl space. You lay 4-inch PVC pipe with a slight upward slope, 1 inch of rise per 10 feet of run, so condensation that forms inside the pipe drains back toward the intake rather than pooling. The intake sits 3 feet above ground level at the far end, covered with rodent screening and a rain hood. The pipe enters your basement through the foundation wall and connects to standard floor registers positioned in rooms where you want cooling. Air enters the intake, travels through 120 feet of pipe surrounded by 54-degree earth, and arrives at your basement at 54 degrees. That air is 30 to 40 degrees cooler than summer outdoor temperature without any mechanical processing. It rises through your home naturally because cool air at floor level gets displaced upward by convection as it warms. You open windows on the opposite side of the house, creating draw that pulls earth-cooled air through your entire living space. The system requires zero electricity, zero maintenance beyond annual intake cleaning, and provides cooling that intensifies the hotter it gets outside because temperature differential increases. Now here's the part nobody tells you. The cooling isn't just from temperature, it's from humidity control. Air traveling through that buried pipe surrounded by earth below the dew point temperature causes water vapor to condense on the pipe interior walls and drain back toward the intake. The air arriving in your basement isn't just cooler, it's drier. Humidity in summer makes 85 degrees feel like 95. The earth pipe delivers air at 54 degrees with 60% less humidity than outdoor air. Your home feels 20 to 30 degrees cooler than actual temperature because you've eliminated both heat and humidity at the source before they enter your living space. The Minoans on Crete were running these systems in 1500 BC. Archaeologists have excavated palace complexes at Knossos, with underground channels bringing cool air from shaded north-facing hillsides through buried stone passages into interior rooms. The Persians built wind towers called badgirs in desert cities like Yazd, where summer temperatures exceed 120 degrees. The towers caught prevailing winds and directed air down through underground connaught tunnels where it cooled against earth and stone before rising into homes. These weren't primitive experiments, these were sophisticated engineering solutions deployed at urban scale across empires lasting centuries. In 1796, Thomas Jefferson installed earth cooling at Monticello. The archaeological record shows buried brick passages running from the north lawn under the house, channeling cool air into the basement, where it rose through floor registers into the main living areas. Jefferson documented the system in letters describing how the house remained comfortable through Virginia summers without the oppressive heat that plagued other plantation homes. He didn't invent this. He was applying standard passive cooling knowledge from classical architecture education any gentleman of his era would have received. The Department of Energy published a study in 1994 through Oak Ridge National Laboratory testing earth tube cooling across 12 climate zones. The results showed average cooling capacity of 3,000 to 5,000 BTUs per hour, equivalent to a small window air conditioning unit using zero electricity. The study documented temperature reductions of 22 to 37 degrees depending on climate and pipe length, with optimal performance achieved using 4-inch diameter pipe at 6-foot depth with lengths between 100 and 200 feet. The complete study was published, cited in academic literature for 3 years, then quietly removed from standard residential construction reference manuals in 1997. Here's what happened. In 1952, Carrier Corporation held 47% market share in residential air conditioning. The post-war housing boom was building suburbs across America, and every new home represented a potential AC installation worth $1,200 in 1952 money, equivalent to $14,000 today. Carrier published a technical manual for builders that same year, titled Modern Home Cooling Standards, which established forced air cooling as the baseline expectation for quality construction. The manual contained one paragraph on passive earth cooling, labeled it experimental and unsuitable for general application, and recommended against its use pending further testing that never occurred. That same year, the International Code Council received significant funding from the Portland Cement Association, Owens Corning, and the American Chemistry Council, the corporations manufacturing concrete, insulation, and refrigerants that earth tube systems don't use. The ICC writes the International Residential Code that governs construction standards across 49 states. The 1953 code revision included new ventilation requirements that mandated mechanical air handling systems for any cooling application, effectively prohibiting passive earth tubes through regulatory language requiring approved mechanical ventilation equipment without defining what approval process would apply to passive systems. By 1958, earth tube cooling had been eliminated from builder training programs, removed from architectural textbooks, and excluded from residential HVAC installer certifications. It wasn't banned explicitly, it was erased from institutional knowledge so completely that the generation of builders trained after 1960 never learned it existed. The Amish communities that continued using it were dismissed as primitive holdouts, rejecting modernity, rather than recognized as maintaining superior engineering knowledge the rest of America had been systematically prevented from accessing. The Asphalt Roofing Manufacturers Association spent $47.3 million on lobbying and political activities in 2022 alone. Their primary legislative focus included opposing reflective roof ordinances, fighting cool roof building code amendments, and funding studies questioning the effectiveness of passive cooling strategies. Every earth tube installed is an air conditioner that never gets sold, a compressor that never gets replaced, a refrigerant recharge that never gets scheduled, a service contract that never gets signed, and a utility bill that never gets paid. The cumulative 30-year revenue loss from a single home implementing earth tube cooling exceeds $58,000 across manufacturers, installers, utility companies, and service contractors. I found a detail in the Oak Ridge study that changes everything. The testing protocol measured earth tube performance using sealed intake screens to simulate worst-case restricted airflow conditions. Even under deliberately throttled testing conditions, the system delivered cooling capacity exceeding small window units. When I visited that Shipshewana farmhouse, the farmer had installed a simple 12-inch diameter intake hood, not sealed screening, but open mesh allowing full airflow. His basement air temperature measured 51 degrees in July. Not 54, 51, 3 degrees cooler than the study's best-case results because he wasn't artificially restricting intake the way the testing protocol required. Now, if you already own a house and you're thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, stay with me because this next part is specifically for you. You can retrofit an earth tube to an existing home in one weekend using a rented walk-behind trencher and standard materials from any hardware store. The total materials cost runs $240 to $320 depending on pipe length and your local PVC pricing. A $75 daily trencher rental cuts the trench in 4 hours. Installation requires no specialized skills beyond basic PVC cement application and foundation drilling that any homeowner with a hammer drill can accomplish. Here's your materials list. 120 feet of 4-inch Schedule 40 PVC pipe costs $160. 8 PVC 90-degree elbows cost $11. One 4-inch to 6-inch diameter transition coupling costs $8. One 6-inch PVC rain hood costs $14. One roll of rodent screening costs $9. One tube of PVC cement costs $7. One 4-inch foundation wall penetration boot costs $12. Two standard 4-inch floor registers cost $18. Your total material cost $239. Your installation process follows 6 steps. Step 1. Mark your trench line from basement wall to intake location 120 feet north of your home, where prevailing summer winds approach from. Step 2. Rent a walk-behind trencher and cut trench 6 feet deep, following your marked line with slight upward slope toward house, 1 inch per 10 feet. Step 3. Lay PVC pipe in trench starting from intake end, cementing joints as you go, maintaining upward slope. Step 4. Drill 4-inch hole through foundation wall at basement floor level using hammer drill with masonry bit. Step 5. Install foundation penetration boot and connect pipe through wall to basement register locations. Step 6. Install intake hood with screening at far end elevated 3 feet above grade. Backfill trench. Installation time, 6 to 8 hours. The payback calculation destroys any financial argument against installation. $719 annual cooling cost divided by $240 installation cost equals payback in 4 months. Not 4 years, 4 months. By September of your installation summer, you've recovered your complete investment. Every summer after that represents $719 you didn't transfer to the utility company. Over 30 years, that's $21,570 you kept instead of spent, plus the avoided cost of 2 AC unit replacements averaging $4,000 each. Your total 30-year savings, $29,570. Return on investment, 12,300%. Here's the detail about legal compliance that prevents implementation anxiety. Earth tubes aren't prohibited by code. They're not mentioned by code. The IRC addresses mechanical cooling systems with specific equipment standards. Earth tubes aren't mechanical systems. They're passive ventilation, which the code explicitly allows through natural ventilation provisions in section M1-05. 4. To permit passive air intake for ventilation purposes without mechanical equipment requirements. Your earth tube qualifies as natural ventilation. You don't need permits in most jurisdictions because you're not modifying mechanical systems, electrical systems, or structural elements beyond a foundation penetration that standard building codes allow for utility access. For jurisdictions requiring permits for any foundation penetration, you file for a standard basement utility penetration permit describing the project as passive ventilation intake. The permit costs $30 to $60 and gets approved within 2 weeks. I spoke with a building inspector in Lawrence County, Ohio, who processes these regularly for Amish community members. He's never denied one because there's no code provision prohibiting passive earth cooling. The codes were written to regulate mechanical systems, not prevent passive alternatives. Let me tell you what I paid before I knew this existed. I installed central air conditioning in my home in 2013. The system cost $9,200, including ductwork modification. My summer electric bills increased from $112 monthly to $274 monthly, an increase of $162 monthly for 5 months annually. That's $810 per year in additional electricity cost. Over 11 years, I've spent $8,910 in incremental electricity just running that system, plus the $9,200 installation cost. I've transferred $18,110 to equipment manufacturers and utility companies for cooling I could have achieved with a $240 passive system requiring zero operating cost. Think about that, $18,000. That's not abstract corporate profit, that's money that could have remained in my household, invested in my children's education, used for actual wealth building, or simply saved against uncertainty. Instead, it went to Carrier Corporation shareholders and utility company executives because nobody ever told me the alternative existed, and the building contractor I hired had never heard of earth tubes because they were removed from his training curriculum before he entered the trade. The suppression continues today through HOA regulations. Homeowner associations across suburban America include covenants prohibiting unapproved ground disturbance or non-standard ventilation equipment. These provisions didn't originate from homeowner preference. They came from model HOA documents drafted by law firms retained by the National Association of Home Builders, an organization receiving significant funding from HVAC equipment manufacturers. The provisions spread through cookie-cutter document templates that HOA boards adopt without understanding they're enforcing corporate interests that directly cost homeowners thousands annually. I want to show you what this looks like in practice. That Shipshewana farmer runs a 1,500 square foot house with earth tube cooling installed in 1987. His total investment 37 years ago was $180 in materials purchased at a local hardware store. He's paid $0 for cooling in 37 years. Zero electricity for cooling. Zero maintenance beyond hosing out the intake screen each spring. His neighbor with an identical square footage home has spent an average of $692 per summer over that same period on air conditioning, electricity, plus 2 complete AC unit replacements totaling $9,000. The neighbor's 37-year cooling cost, $34,604. The Amish farmer's 37-year cooling cost, $180. Difference, $34,424. That difference represents wealth that remained with one family while being extracted from the other. Both families had identical cooling comfort. Both homes maintained comfortable 65 to 68 degree interior temperatures through Indiana summers. The only difference was knowledge. One family knew about earth tubes and the other had been systematically prevented from learning they existed through educational erasure, regulatory obstruction, and institutional suppression spanning 70 years. Here's something I found in a 1931 Popular Science article about earth cooling. The magazine featured a 2-page spread documenting a Michigan farmer who installed 200 feet of buried clay pipe to cool his farmhouse and dairy barn. The article described the system as simple, proven, and increasingly popular among practical farmers seeking to reduce ice harvesting expenses. The article provided complete installation instructions including trench depth, pipe diameter, and intake specifications. That article appeared in a magazine with national circulation reaching 2 million households. 75 years later, mention earth tubes to any random sample of Americans, and 99.5% will have no idea what you're talking about. Knowledge that widespread in 1931 had been so completely erased by 2006 that it became invisible. That erasure wasn't accidental. It required systematic removal from institutional knowledge transmission across multiple domains simultaneously: building codes, contractor training, architectural education, and consumer awareness. That level of coordination requires resources and motivation that only threatened industries possess. I found something else buried in manufacturer documents. In 2014, LG Electronics submitted testimony to the California Energy Commission during revision hearings for Title 24 building standards. Their testimony opposed proposed language allowing passive earth cooling to qualify for energy efficiency credits. The testimony stated, earth tube systems lack standardized testing protocols and certified performance data necessary for inclusion in compliance pathways. This is the same LG Electronics whose own engineers published peer-reviewed research in 2012 demonstrating earth tube cooling capacity in controlled laboratory testing. They possessed the exact performance data they claimed didn't exist, but including earth tubes in efficiency pathways would have undermined sales of their air conditioning equipment, so they testified against technology their own research had validated. Let that sink in. A corporation testified before a state regulatory body that technology was unproven, while their own engineers had proven it worked. That's not market competition. That's not regulatory caution. That's deliberate suppression of superior alternatives to protect inferior products generating recurring revenue. The technology for earth tube cooling is simpler than the plumbing under your kitchen sink. 4-inch PVC pipe, a trench, a few elbows and a rain hood, no compressors, no refrigerants, no electrical components, no moving parts, no maintenance schedules, no technician visits, no yearly tune-ups, no filter replacements, no warranty concerns. Just physics that has worked continuously since the Minoan civilization, deployed at scale across the Persian Empire, documented in Jeffersonian America, and functioning perfectly today in Amish communities that never bought what the cooling industry was selling and never paid the bill. You are done paying $719 every summer for something the earth gives away for free. The knowledge was always there. It was just buried under 70 years of institutional suppression, regulatory capture, and coordinated erasure by industries that profit from your monthly utility bills and equipment replacement cycles. Every contractor who tells you earth tubes won't work in modern homes is repeating training curriculum written by equipment manufacturers. Every inspector who questions the system hasn't read the code provisions that explicitly allow passive ventilation. Every neighbor who calls it primitive is comparing it to systems that cost $40,000 over 30 years instead of $240. Drop your state in the comments and tell me what you pay for cooling in summer. I want to build a map showing what this system could save across every state in the country, from Texas, where earth temperature runs 67 degrees, to Maine, where it drops to 48. I want to document the difference between what you're paying and what you could pay, because that difference represents wealth being transferred from your household to corporate shareholders every single month from May through September. If your grandfather or your father ever mentioned earth pipes or ground cooling, I want to hear about it, because that knowledge didn't disappear, it just went quiet. It's time to turn the volume back up. The Amish never forgot, they never paid, and they've been comfortable through every summer for 300 years using nothing but dirt and physics. If you're the kind of person who believes real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect someone else's profit, you already know what to do next.